Chapter 46. The others passed out of Le Rubicond to study at an Ivy League school, or Oxbridge or Tsinghua University. The others stayed in touch with their peers through the Rubicond alumni network, l'Association Internationale des Antediluviens Rubicond. The others took their place in big business and took some scalps in the boardroom while they were at it. Not so Perdita. After graduating from the esteemed academy, her parents sent her a message saying they'd buy her a place on any degree course she'd like, anywhere in the world. But Perdita was 18, free from her stinking rich companions, and could finally break out of the ludicrous confines of her social strata. Without hesitation, Perdita moved to the concrete hinterland of the suburbs, where the real action was. She messaged her parents, saying she was going on a gap year to travel the world, but instead moved into a semi-detached house share on a residential estate on the outskirts of East Clopford. She'd done her research, and the area hosted a thriving youth activist scene. Soon a familiar face at local rallies, street marches, sit-ins, petitions, boycotts, and demonstrations, Perdita organised herself in opposition to the big corporations and their latest environmental or social atrocity. A youth collective, Let's Start Something, met regularly on her estate, and she joined the small band of fired-up activists, keen to contribute to the cause. The trouble was that her politically minded comrades looked so different from her. Intelligent, yes, for the most part. Impassioned, most certainly. But there was no escaping the fact that, physically, she was considerably more attractive than the rest of them. It shouldn't have mattered. Perdita certainly didn't care. She was there for the issues, not superficial nonsense like body fat percentage or facial symmetry. The young militant didn't see what all the fuss was about. She'd known students at Le Rubicond with stunning genetic sculpting, like angels. Her parents had only bought her a standard upgrade. They hadn't wanted her to stand out too much. Still, amongst her ill-favoured comrades at Let's Start Something, even this moderate degree of beauty was a drawback. The boys didn't listen to her ardent opinions, distracted as they were by their base urges and the futility of their desire, and the girls became suspicious of her. It was a tough spot for Perdita to occupy, somewhere between the spurned boys and the jealous girls. In defence, the group did its best to dismiss Perdita and neutralise the effect she was having on them. Repeatedly, they labelled her as some sort of neocon puppet. She was nothing of the sort, quite the opposite, in fact, but faced with her toned skin, glossy hair, and straight white teeth, the others marked her out as some kind of trophy wife conservative type who'd do anything to maintain the status quo. It was extremely unfair, but to Perdita's credit, she didn't give up. Instead, she played her favourite childhood game again. Dress up. The aim was to look as crusty and rebellious as possible. So it was baggy dungarees, rainbow-striped stockings, and ill-fitting t-shirts with inexplicable slogans like "Turtles Against the Patriarchy." She shaved half her head and dyed the other half bright pink one week and bright blue the next. Her scrawled-on makeup looked like she'd applied it with a thick permanent marker, and, the coup de grace, she got a chunky piercing through the septum in her nose and a bevy of tattoos. It should have done the trick. Really, it should have. But the problem with Perdita was that she looked good in anything. You could have dressed her in a biohazard waste disposal bag and she would have carried it off. Her attempts to look garish, awkward and provocative somehow just ended up looking a bit cool. To her disappointment, Perdita found herself being pressed into yet more pigeonholes. Tourist, charlatan, champagne socialist, Kashmir communist, latte liberal, Bollinger Bolshevik. The comments glanced off her like water off a duck's back. She considered it childish to take such rejection personally, but nevertheless, it hindered her progress. Perdita reviewed the situation. If her appearance distracted them, then she'd just have to make a stronger ideological impression. Leave no doubt in anyone's mind where she stood. It was time to get radical. I have the entry permissions to an isolated boarding school in the Alps, she'd called out, standing up during a "Let's Start Something" meeting. I've acquired a people carrier with space for 11 of you this Sunday night. The primary target is the kitchens. All food stores will be removed and replaced with sand. This will represent the famines our sisters and brothers face in the deserts today and the ecological barrenness of our scarred planet. I've also hired a hacker to design the sepsis we'll use to infect the school's auto canteen. On Monday morning, the entire school, all the pupils and teachers, will be served bowl after bowl of sand. The main hollow projector in the food hall will play recent graphic footage of war and starvation that our comrades in the south are suffering. We'll plant camera drones to document the scene, and by Monday afternoon, this will have gone viral. The colourfully dressed gang of activists stared at her, astounded. Perdita gave them her ultimatum. 11 places. There's a lot of sand to shift and a lot of food to remove. Who's in? There was no question about it. Let's Start Something had never done anything this ambitious before, and no matter how pretty the new girl was, this was a great idea. By Sunday, the mass truck Perdita had sourced was heavy with sand and social justice, and the cabin buzzed with rebellious creativity. Using her access codes, they entered the campus and parked in the car stack. Keeping to the shadows, the giddy group crept along behind Perdita until they reached the back of the medieval food hall and accessed the kitchens via a service door, where they were immediately captured by a phalanx of security dog drones whose sharp robotic force subdued them all in a heartbeat. Perdita never found out what happened to the others. They were each dragged off in different directions, their eye lines stripped from them and neutralised. Within moments, they marched her to a waiting mass car and shuttled off, away from the illustrious school. Perdita wondered what they'd do with her. Perhaps they'd dismiss her to the RMZ. Perhaps they'd execute her. Her next thought delivered itself in a faint and sombre tone. Perhaps such an end would somehow rebalance the scales of justice. Stupid child, spoilt brat. A call came through on the mass car's hollow projector. We're driving you back to East Clopford, Perdita, said the head of security at Le Rubicon. We advise you not to engage in such endeavours again. This is the seat of learning for some of the most prestigious people in the world. Our security here is second to none. There are corporate giants who lag behind us both technically and tactically. Is that understood? And what about the others? Perdita asked. Which others? Came the reply. The others, the activists who came with me. I'm not sure what you mean. There were no other activists. Perdita scowled. The others who... There were no others. The security chief cut her off. I see, Perdita sighed. She'd have to leave East Clopford now. They'd never trust her after this. But you're letting me go because, what, my family? Because I studied here? The school's reputation? The floating head looked thoughtful, then smiled a little. I think it's because you're such a pretty young thing, Perdita. They glanced at something off camera. Nearly there now. Like I said, best of luck and everything. And please refrain from any such aggressions in the future. It doesn't become you.